Hey guys, and welcome back to the Level 4 Beginner Guitar course with me, Rex Pearson, from rexpearson.com. Okay, I hope you guys are doing alright and you've been working on how to make your guitar sing, or that's what I've called the lessons. It's basically giving you ideas and techniques that you can use to spice up your playing and be a little bit different to those around you by covering these sorts of areas. There's two more techniques that I want to talk to you about that are very guitar specific. One of them is legato, and that's what we're going to be covering right now. Legato basically is a fancy word for just meaning to play something smoothly. So it's a word that's used to describe all sorts of playing, not just guitar, but violins have legato technique, saxophones have legato technique, and there's just a way that we can play the guitar to make things sound smooth. If I was to play something with just 3 notes, something like this. Now, I've played that, each note one after the other, and it sounds very abrupt, very short and sharp. If I was to play the same thing but use a legato technique, it sounds a lot smoother than, and all I'm doing is legato technique, and I'm going to give you just the basics of how to play legato properly. If this is something that you really want to get into, it's very much a lead guitar technique. If this is something that you would like to explore, you're going to need to know a lot of scale shapes and scale patterns and know how to use them to create legato patterns that you would have seen many guitarists play. For this course though, as it's a beginner guitar course, it's just giving you a glimpse of what the legato is, so next time someone comes up to you and says, oh, can you play legato? You can say, oh yeah, legato is, and then show them what it is. So we're going to start off with just a very basic exercise, and I'm going to need to teach you a new scale pattern so that you can play this legato exercise. So we're going to be looking at a very small part of a full A minor scale. At the moment you just know the A minor pentatonic, so let's just start by knowing the notes that we're going to use. I should probably mention that the legato technique is an extremely useful technique, not just for playing lead guitar, but also for developing the left hand strength and developing coordination between the right and left hands, which is something that beginner guitarists will struggle with. This is a really good way of developing this link between your two hands so that you're not having to consciously think about two. So let's start with the first exercise, and it's just about learning the scale shape. Okay, so the scale shape that we're going to be using for this first exercise starts at the 4th fret with the first finger on the G string. Then going to move up 1 fret and play with the 2nd finger, and then the 4th finger 2 frets away from that, which is the 7th fret on the same string. So you've got those 3 notes. Then you're going to move to the next string and move slightly further up the fretboard. You're going to be playing the 5th fret with the 1st finger, the 2nd finger is going to take the 6th fret, and the 4th finger is going to take the 8th fret on the B string. So you've got, final string is going to be the 5th fret, 7th fret and 8th fret again, and you're using the fingers 1, 3, 4. Make sure you stick rigidly to these fingerings. 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 4 and 1, 3, 4. Practice that ascending, descending. As slow and as accurate as you can play it. If you start making mistakes, slow it down so that you can play those notes one after the other reasonably comfortably. And then we're going to start applying the legato technique. Okay, this one's really going to build up the strength now. Legato technique is basically a mixture of hammer-ons and pull-offs rather than actually plucking the notes with the right hand. So we've covered how to do a hammer-on by playing a note and hammering on just behind the fret and trying to get some sustain on there. The pull-off is where you pull towards the ground and get a ping so that you can ring the string below it, and again you try and get as much sustain as possible. Legato technique is to play the notes with as minimum amount of movement of the plectrum as possible. So the first 3 notes that we had, rather than picking out each note, we're going to play them all hammer-ons. And what you'll find, particularly with the 4th finger, is going to be very difficult to get that sustain. So you'll need to spend some time working on the fingers that don't produce enough sustain. It will get there with a bit of strength. What you're aiming for is a kind of flick with the finger, rather than just resting the finger down, which will then cut off. You're aiming to really get that finger to hammer onto the string and cause it to sort of do that on the string. So you're going to need to get a snap, kind of like a ninja finger. Okay, so you've got those first 3 notes. The next 3 notes, you do the exact same thing. It's all hammer-ons. Then finally, same again, but this time all hammer-ons. And really try and work on that hammer-on. And you might find it easy if you work on one part at a time, until you get a nice sounding, sustaining note. It's actually harder to play legato slowly than it is to play it fast. So if you can play it slow, then you're a lot further ahead than you might think. The next stage is to get it running smoothly. So exercise 1 is just an ascending legato technique on those 3 strings. It sounds like this. Again. And you notice that the plectrum, I'm doing down strokes, down, and down, on the first note of each group of 3. That's what produces the legato. If I wasn't playing legato, it'd sound like this. That's the first exercise. Second exercise is to do the same thing but descending. So this is a little bit more difficult because it involves a combination of pull-offs. So line up on the top note. You'll be pulling off to the 3rd finger and then pulling off to the 1st. I should make a point now that with the hand position, you really want to do the thumb behind the neck approach and get a bit of space and a gap between the fretboard and your palm here, because it allows your hand to move with a bit more flexibility than being bunched up like this. Legato is almost impossible to play with the thumb over the neck approach properly. There's a lot of tension in the hand. Then you move down to the next string, you repeat the process. Try just the 4th finger and the 2nd. Might sound bad at first. Then when you get it, next finger, and then all of them. And then the final one. You combine it all together and you get a legato run that sounds like this. Put the 2 exercises together and you get a loop. Okay, that guys is the legato exercise. I hope that sort of introduces the technique to you and gives you a basic understanding of how to play it. Remember that the main rule for legato playing is to use the plectrum as little as possible. For beginner guitarists, it's best to do the first note as a plectrum hit and then see if you can get away with doing the rest without having to use the plectrum at all.